Okay, let's start.
Awesome. So, hey everyone, welcome to another, should I say episode? Yeah, we can. Another episode of Project Tours. Welcome to the CNCF Ahmedabad uh, Project Tour online meeting. Before I start, I would like to tell where we are currently located at. Uh, so we are located at in a city called Ahmedabad and in the state of Gujarat, India, and we wanted to expand from here to globally, and that's why the entire concept of CNCF Project Tour came in. So this the concept of CNCF Project Tour started in January, and we are already in August, and we have done some amazing work. To see all those work, you can go to our playlist. I'll keep this for a few seconds, and here you can see all the amazing talks from all the amazing people who have given those talks. And I forgot that I couldn't introduce what the project tour is all about. So we wanted to get core contributors and core maintainers of amazing CNCF projects, and we wanted some insights around it. We wanted to know how those project actually works, and maybe if we had some questions, we can have uh, the main speaker help us understand what those things actually do. And so if you see, we have done some amazing talks around eBPF, Cilium, Knative, Jaeger, and we have a good more projects in our pipeline. But today is a very special day for us because we wanted to get a project which is widely used, one of the most, I'd say personally, I use that project a lot at my work, and that would be ArgoCD. And I think all of us have known these project, and some of us might be using it very well. And before this call, we got to know that I got personally got to know a lot more in depth about it. That it is not just a single project. Sneak peek. You'll get to know about it a lot more in the talk. But in order to get information around Argo CD, about the project, about the entire ecosystem, we have a very special guest today, who is our speaker, who is Kostis. He's a senior developer evangelist at Octopus Deploy, and he's a core contributor of a project, and he's been there with the project for a very long time now. He has done some amazing work, and now I'll not take much of a time because I'm sure he has a lot more details to share about the project. So Kostis, welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the introduction. Let me share my own screen now. So the way this will go is that I have a short presentation to talk about the ecosystem, and then we can look at a demo. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and we can fine tune the demo according to the questions. So I'm working as a developer advocate at Codefresh, which was a company that was acquired by Octopus Deploy, and I'm part of the Argo team. The Argo project actually has 4 projects. I'm focusing mostly on ArgoCD and Argo rollouts, and I'm also the co-author of the first ever GitOps certification that you can see on learning.codefresh.io. So today we're going to talk about not one, not two, not three, but 4 Argo projects, because Argo is a family of projects. So this is the main web page, and if you go to the web page, you will see this nice motto that says "Get stuff done with Kubernetes." So this tells you that all the projects that we're going to talk about today are Kubernetes native. So these are the 4 projects. Argo is a family of projects. So when people usually say they use Argo, you need to ask what exactly they mean. Sometimes they mean Argo CD, but some other times they mean Argo workflows. So these are the 4 Argo projects, and you can see by the number of the stars the popularity they have in GitHub. So Argo CD is probably the most popular one, and this is where we'll focus after the presentation. But Argo workflows is also another major project. And then we have Argo rollouts and Argo events, which are small but getting more popular. So what do these projects do? Each one does something specific, but you can combine them if you want. So ArgoCD is for deploying your applications in a Kubernetes cluster using the GitOps methodology. Argo Workflows is a generic workflow engine that you can use to run jobs. If you're familiar with other systems like Tecton, it's very similar. Argo Events is a generic event mechanism again for Kubernetes, and Argo Rollouts, my favorite project, is for progressive delivery. And the first thing I want to clarify, because sometimes people are getting confused by this, is that all four projects are created independently. Like you can take any of them, or all of them, or two of them, or three of them. And I'm saying this because sometimes people come to me and they explain their use case, and I'm answering something like, hey, what you're saying is a perfect use case for Argo rollouts. And they say to me, but we are not using Argo CD, so we cannot use Argo rollouts. This is wrong. There are no dependencies between the four projects. You can use each one on its own, but of course they are made, to work well together and to cooperate. There are also several libraries that are shared between the two projects. So if you want to set up SSO in Argo CD, it's very similar with how you set up SSO in Argo workflows because it makes sense to reuse the same components. So this is the history of the project. I'm not going to go into too many details from this, just two key points that all four projects are created by different companies. So the first one, Argo Workflows, was created by a company that was called Aplatix. Argo CD and Argo Rollouts were created by Intuit. It's the company behind the TurboTax, which is a very famous tax program in the US. And then Argo Events was donated by BlackRock. So it's four projects by three companies. Now they are all part from the CNCF, and in 2022 they graduated. So if you know how CNCF works, when you start a project, there is a series of levels that you must pass before your graduation. But once you graduated, it means that you are production ready. CNCF recommends to use this project, and you can use it in your company today. If you're interested in the projects, know that there is also a secondary GitHub repo apart from the main one, which is Argo Project Labs. And there you can see upcoming technologies or experiments like stuff that is not part of the main project yet, but maybe it will become in the future. And there have been cases where something like application sets that we're going to talk about started as an incubating project from Argo Project Labs. And then later people said, oh, this is super useful. Let's make it part of the main project. Another important topic that I want to say it's pretty different according to other projects is that right now there isn't like a single company behind the projects, because several times you look at other projects and there is a single company which has like an open source version and also they're selling services on top of it. With Argo, it's not like this. It's like more than one companies. You can see the companies on the board, at least the main ones. I'm working for Codefresh, which is now part from Octopus Deploy. So just before we started this, we had a discussion regarding the number of CNCF projects and like how you can understand where you should spend your effort. Like there are so many projects and it's impossible to cover everything. So one of my recommendation is that this is the blog post that is called like CNCF Velocity, and the CNCF publishes this every 6 months or every 1 year. I think this is the latest one. And it has all the CNCF projects, and you can see the vertical axis is pull requests and issues, and the horizontal axis is contributors. So the more popular a project is, the more is on the top right. And you can instantly see here, like Argo CD at this point is number 3. Like it's in the top 10. Maybe the position changes every 6 months or 1 year, but it's always in the top 10. So if you want to find something popular to work on, Argo CD is definitely one of the popular projects. Kubernetes is obviously number 1, and OpenTelemetry is also very popular. And this is another graph. Now we go one level up. So this is not just cloud projects. We are not in the CNCF anymore. We are looking at the Linux Foundation. So one level above, like all the projects, even if they are not for the cloud, but they are still for Linux. And here, even though, Argo is not in the top 3, it's still in the top 10. So my point here is that Argo is a popular project in general, even if you look outside the cloud. So if you want to know what all the cool kids are working on, Argo is the way to go. Okay, so let's dive into the four projects, and I'm going to start with Argo Workflows because this was the original project, like the first project that was created and had the Argo name was Argo Workflows. And sometimes when people say I'm using Argo, they might mean workflows. So this is a generic workflow mechanism for Kubernetes. So it runs on Kubernetes. If you have seen other projects like Tecton or Apache Airflow, it's super similar. And when I'm saying it's generic, it means that you can use it however you want. So maybe you want to run, CI/CD pipelines, or maybe you want to run machine learning or other batch jobs. You can do it. It has several advanced features where you can define, how your workflow starts, how it ends. You have fan out, fan in configuration, synchronization points, and stuff like this. And because it's Kubernetes native, once you install it in the cluster, it introduces some new Kubernetes resources, CRDs. So workflow is a running instance of a workflow that is something that has started running in the cluster. A workflow template is a definition that you are writing in order to create a workflow. And then there are other specific tasks for cron jobs. So this is a very simple example. Remember, this is a custom Kubernetes resource that you get after you install Argo workflows. I'm saying here I have a workflow, and this is a super simple example. I'm just running hello world, and you can see the format is very similar to how you would create a deployment. And of course, this happens on purpose. Okay, so why you should care, like why this is important. As I said, the main advantage of Argo workflows is that it's Kubernetes native. So it's running in a Kubernetes cluster, and it gains all the advantages of Kubernetes auto-scaling and all the tools. So unlike other similar solutions that you might have seen, Argo workflows runs a step per pod. Like you can have a big workflow that needs 10 steps to finish, and you can say this step will run in that pod and this step will run in that pod, and then you can auto scale those pods according to the need of each step. So this is super important on how you scale up your application. This is a live example that we use internally. It's a test suite. I think it's UI tests, and you can see all the possible configurations we are running. It's parallel, and we can easily understand which test needs more resources and fine tune the Kubernetes cluster according to those requirements. So as I said, this is a CI/CD example. You can also use it for machine learning. Argo Workflows also has a very nice UI that you can give to the developers if you want, and there they can look at the workflows, maybe run the workflows, debug the workflows, understand how they're running. And if you want to know more, I will not cover all the features today. You should go in and look at the documentation. You can store and retrieve artifacts. There is a CLI and an API. You can define retries. And as I said, it also has SSO and RBAC. So this is Argo workflows. Now let's go to the main highlight, ArgoCD, which is a project that we will focus on also after the presentation. So ArgoCD deploys applications, and it's Kubernetes native, meaning that not only it deploys applications on a Kubernetes cluster, but also it's running on a Kubernetes cluster itself. This is what Kubernetes native means. It supports help and customize files if you already use help and customize. And also it's great if you have like a big company with many users or many customers and you want to install it in a multi-tenant environment. So this is how it looks. We will also see this in the demo later. Each box is an application, and usually the green color means that it's healthy and everything goes well. You can also click on an application and drill down and see the actual Kubernetes component of that application. So here I have a very simple example, and you can see it has services and replica sets and pods. So this is also very useful for developers because sometimes they use ArgoCD as a general Kubernetes dashboard, like to understand how an existing application is running, what are the components, and what is the hierarchy. So developers really love this. So how do we adopt ArgoCD? Judging from the name, you can imagine that ArgoCD takes over the continuous delivery process that you already have, while you keep the existing process that you have for continuous integration. So on the top, we have the classic CI pipeline, like the traditional CI pipeline that maybe you have today in Jenkins or in Circle CI or in TeamCity or in GitHub Actions, where you start from a Git commit, you compile the source code, maybe you run some tests, then you create a container image, you push it to a registry, and then usually the last step is you have a custom script that goes and runs kubectl and applies the image to the cluster. So the first part stays where it is, like you don't change the CI part, but you remove the last step, you don't use kubectl anymore, and your CI system doesn't need to have access to a Kubernetes cluster anymore. And instead, you use ArgoCD, which is what we have on the bottom. So you install ArgoCD on your target cluster or on another cluster. And then as a last step, you should commit something to Git. You should make a commit in a Kubernetes manifest or a Helm chart or a customized overlay, and then ArgoCD will take over and pull updates. That's the new way of working with ArgoCD. Now, when I say this, people always ask the same question. Okay, but why this is better? Like, why should we care? We can do the same thing with a pipeline. And the answer is that this is not exactly the same. The pipelines work only in a bidirectional way. Like all existing systems like Jenkins or CircleCI or TeamCity or whatever, they only take changes from Git and they apply them to the cluster. That's the only thing they are doing. ArgoCD also works the other way. That's the big strength. It watches the cluster and checks if there are changes on the cluster and Git. Okay, and this is happening all the time. So here I have an example where ArgoCD has deployed an application, but then somebody had gone and changed manually in the cluster the ports. So if you do this change and you're still using Jenkins, Jenkins will not understand anything. Like it will not know that something has changed in the application. ArgoCD understands this. So at the top, it says that it's out of sync. And this means that what you have now in Git, it's not the same thing that you have in your cluster. And then you can make a choice. You can say, okay, this change is something that I want to happen. So I will commit it to Git and everything will be fine. Or you have the option and say, no, I don't want this change, discard it, and let's go back to what Git has. So this is amazing because it means that with ArgoCD, essentially, you eliminate configuration drift once and for all. So configuration drift is a case where the cluster doesn't have exactly what you think it has. Um, Somebody has gone and done manual changes. Maybe your team, cowboy developers that they go and change stuff. Maybe they do a small setting in QA just to pass a test, or they even go to production if you give them access and they change something small, and then you never know about this. With ArgoCD, you eliminate this completely. Like you don't suffer from configuration drift anymore. You always know that what you have in Git is also what you have in the cluster. So each green box is another Kubernetes entity introduced by ArgoCD. It's an ArgoCD application, and it says where are your manifests and what cluster they should be deployed on. And also ArgoCD introduces other entities such as a project, which is a way of how you group applications and then put security controls, and also application sets for creating applications that we will talk about more details in a while. So this is the most basic ArgoCD application. Again, you see it's a brand new Kubernetes CRD that you get after you install ArgoCD. At the top, you see it's an application. It has a name. And then it's very simple. Like the simplest form is a link between where to take the manifests from and which cluster to put them in. And by default, you put them in the same cluster that ArgoCD is deployed on. Now, that was a simple case, but let's say you have a more advanced scenario. If we have time, we'll see in the demo where you have multiple applications and multiple clusters. So in this case, it doesn't make sense to define applications one by one. So here I have an application set on the screen, and this is another brand new resource that you get after you install ArgoCD. And this is an application generator, like it deploys multiple applications. And in this simple example, it says, go to my Git repo and go into my apps folder and get everything that has an NVSQA overlay. Like it's an example of customize, and then create an application out of this. So I can deploy this single file, and if this folder contains, 10 subfolders, I will also get 10 more applications. So this is an example of using an application set in place. Let's see if this video works. Okay, it works. So here I have a brand new ArgoCD cluster. It's completely empty. It has nothing. And then I deploy a single application set, a single file that has, I think, 13 applications. It generates 13 applications for me. So I deploy the single file, and you can see instantly ArgoCD auto-creates 13 applications without me having to write 13 distinct files. So I started from a completely empty cluster, and I filled it right away. So you can imagine a scenario where you have a process and you say, for every new cluster, I always want Cert Manager, Core DNX, Nginx, Sealed Secrets, and then the payment gateway, billing, or whatever, like your set of applications. You put them in a single application set, and then after you apply, the cluster is ready to work, and you can see it just takes 3 seconds as long as I have the definition. And I'm saying this because this is one of the strengths of ArgoCD when you have lots of applications and lots of clusters. So speaking about lots of clusters, there is also another decision that you need to make once you install ArgoCD. There is a choice where you have a single centralized ArgoCD instance. This is what you see on the left. And then you connect all the other clusters on that central ArgoCD instance. So in the end, there is only one ArgoCD server and controls multiple clusters that are connected to it. Or there is another pattern where you have one ArgoCD instance per cluster. So you install ArgoCD individual to each cluster. There isn't like a correct or wrong answer. It depends on the use case. My company also has a third installation option, which is a control plane for multiple Argo CD instance. But I'm saying that this is something that you should, ask yourselves, talk with your team, and understand which one should you choose, because as you can imagine, there are advantages and disadvantages for each one of them. So there are several other more features. I don't know if we will cover them today. You can define sync policies, like when deployments will happen. You can define sync waves and put an order to your application. So say I want this application to deploy first, and then that application should go second. And there is again a CLI and API. You can add also an RBAC, so you can give this to your developers and lock them down and allow them to look only at the applications they control. Or you can have multiple application teams, and each one will get a different ArgoCD dashboard according to their privileges. Okay, so that was about ArgoCD. More details about ArgoCD after the presentation. Let's talk about my favorite project now, which is Argo Rollouts. And this is a project for progressive delivery. Now, progressive delivery means different things to different people. So in this case, we are talking about essentially blue-green deployments and canary deployments. So in the case of blue-green that you see on the left, I want to deploy an application with the safest manner possible. So instead of just recreating the application to the new version, I launch the brand new version of the application, and I'm not sending any live traffic there. So I can do some checks. Maybe I can run some smoke tests. I can ask my QA team to look at them. And when the QA team or my tests say, okay, everything is ready, I switch my load balancer, and then all the live users go to the new version instantly. And if something is wrong, I can switch back to the old version. Canary deployments are similar, but instead of having like a single point in time where I just switch everybody, I can work with percentages. So I can start deploying a new version and say, okay, send only 10% of users to the new version, and everybody else will be on the old one. Okay, this looks good. Let's send 30%, 40%, and then you go to 100%. So this is a way to have more safe deployments without downtime. And I'm mentioning this because if you know how Kubernetes works, Kubernetes out of the box doesn't support progressive delivery. Out of the box, you only have access to rolling updates where you kill one pod and you create another pod, and you don't have any control on how to stop this or how to roll back. Or you have the create strategy, which always causes downtime because you delete everything and recreate all the pods at once. Argo Rollouts also has a very simple UI. It introduces its own CRD like all the other projects. The main one is called Rollout. And you can also add some more details about what you want to check before and after a deployment. So this is the UI. It's super simple. You can see on the top left, I have started the Canary projects, and right now it's at 20%. Like 20% of all users see the new version, while 80% sees the old version. And here I paused and I can make some checks, and then you can see the next step is 40% and so on. And then on the right, you can see the pods for each version. So if you adopt Argo rollouts, you get Kubernetes progressive delivery. Behind the scenes, it works with replica sets. So instead of having a deployment that controls replica sets, you get replica sets controlled by Argo rollouts. So in the case of blue-green, you launch a second replica set that has a new version, and then you can redirect traffic from one replica set or the other. This is the top diagram. Or in the case of canaries, as seen in the bottom, you can use percentages again with replica sets. So this is how it works with Kubernetes. There are several CRDs that Argo rollouts defines. Rollout is the main one that says what will happen with the rollout. Analysis template is a way where you can define some smoke tests or some other check where you can say, please, after each step in the canary or before the promotion in blue-green, check this thing. And if it works, then assume that everything is fine. And there are also experiments for A/B testing. You can find more details in the documentation. So here is an example of a rollout. So the rollout looks like a deployment. It has the exact same fields as a normal Kubernetes deployment, but you can see at the top, instead of being kind deployment, it's kind rollout. And then including the familiar fields of the deployment, it has an extra field called strategy, which I have highlighted with orange color there, which defines this extra capability of the rollout. So in this example, it says, this is not a standard deployment anymore. It's a canary process. And I'm going to start by sending 10% of my traffic to the new version. This is the set weight property. And then I will pause for 1 hour, maybe do some checks. And then once I'm confident with my checks, I'm going to go to 20%. Another big choice that you need to make is whether you want to use a traffic provider or not. If you don't use a traffic provider, then you need to launch the same number of pods as the percentages. So if you want to send 10% of the traffic to your canary, you need to launch 1 pod out of 10 with a new version. If you use a traffic manager, you don't have this limitation. As can see on the right, you can send as much traffic as you want. So these are the existing traffic providers that are supported out of the box. But if you're familiar with the Gateway API, which is on the top bottom right, this is a standard. It's the next gen ingress spec from Kubernetes. You can also use any provider that uses the Gateway API. Now, the final goal of Argo rollouts is to have automated deployments. We don't want to have humans looking at deployments and making rollbacks. We want to automate this. So ideally, you also have some metrics already with your application, and you instruct Argo rollouts to perform a deployment and then also look at the metrics and then take a decision if the metrics are okay or not. So yes, you can deploy on Friday at 5 o'clock. This is what I believe. You deploy at 5 o'clock on Friday, and then you go home or at the pub or at the cinema or go play football or go to be with your family, because you have Argo rollouts behind the scenes, and it will check the deployment for you, and either it will promote it while you are with your family or it will roll it back. So this is a very simple example of how you run an analysis template. Here I'm saying I'm using Prometheus. So I assume I already have Prometheus metrics for my application, and I run a Prometheus query. And I think this example just checks if the HTTP calls return 500 or not. And if they are, then I assume that something is wrong. So Argo rollouts will automatically roll back. If they are not, then Argo rollouts will say, okay, everything looks good, let's promote. This is just a very simple example. You can use many more complex analysis templates or even many analysis templates in parallel. Again, these are the metric providers that are supported out of the box, but you can see there is also a custom plugin, so you can run your own unit tests or smoke tests or integration tests to decide if a deployment is successful or not. If you are interested in Argo rollouts, go into documentation. There are several other features. You can do A/B testing. You can have notifications when something happens. You can write your own plugins. And last but not least, we have Argo events. This is a generic event mechanism for Kubernetes. So it's Kubernetes native, it's getting installed or Kubernetes. And it's not a brand new event bus, like it's not creating events on its own. It just connects existing event providers. So if you're familiar with Kafka or RabbitMQ or SQS, it works with them. And essentially, it allows you to create workflows in your cluster with simple scenarios where you can say, when something gets committed to Git, run this Lambda function and set the Slack notification. When somebody sends a message to RabbitMQ, I want to know about this, download something from S3 and send this message to my pub sub implementation. Or you can imagine other scenarios with cron jobs. It's very useful for batch jobs or other applications that you want to just respond to events that happen in the system without any real human intervention. So like all the other projects, Argo defines its own CRDs for your Kubernetes cluster, and you can see event source is how I read events from somewhere. trigger is a decision what will happen when I get this event, and then sensors and event bus connect those two together. So here is a very simple example. Here I'm defining a webhook, and I'm saying I want to know when somebody calls /example at port 12,000 with a post a method. So that's just an event source. It creates events for me. And then I have to make a choice. What do I need to do with those events? So here is the sensor, which defines what will happen. And in this case, I'm saying when somebody is using the webhook that I just defined in the previous slide, then create this workflow. I'm using Argo workflows and do something. And in this case, it just runs hello world. The Argo Workflows UI also works with Argo events, so you can use it for visualizing your Argo events. It's a very popular combination to have Argo events and Argo workflows together. Okay, so these are the 4 projects. You should know now what each of them is doing, and let's see how you can combine them into different use cases. So, of course, you can take each project on its own and use it. That's just fine. But some very popular combinations is use ArgoCD and Argo rollouts together. So here I'm saying for my non-production environments, I will just use ArgoCD on its own, just ArgoCD that will take care of the deployments. But specifically for production, where I want to have absolutely zero downtime, I want to do canaries, and I'm going to use Argo rollouts there in combination with ArgoCD. So staging will use only ArgoCD, production will use ArgoCD and Argo rollouts. That's a very popular scenario of combining ArgoCD and Argo rollouts. Another popular scenario is to use Argo workflows and Argo events together. So as we have seen, Argo events takes care of understanding when something happens in your infrastructure. So when somebody creates a Git commit or when a RabbitMQ queue gets a message. And then with Argo workflows, you define what you want to happen. So on the top, I have a classical CI-like pipeline. Somebody commits something in Git. This is picked by Argo events. And then I want to build an image, run unit tests, run security scans, and upload the result to S3. This is taking care of Argo workflows. Or I have a custom job that, let's say, runs every 3 hours or every midnight that goes to a database, reads something, processes the data, saves them in another database, and then runs a Lambda function. ArgoCD is great, for syncing applications to a cluster, but sometimes you have some complex requirements on what you want to happen before the sync process and after the sync process. So here I have an example where ArgoCD will take care of the basic deployment, like somebody changes a manifest in Git, then ArgoCD will deploy to the cluster, but I want, before this deployment to happen, to run a long-running job that backups my database, and I notify developers about something, or I upload the database backup somewhere, and then after the deployment, I want to run smoke tests or some security scans or notify Slack. You can combine Argo workflows with Argo CD and handle these tasks to Argo workflows so that each project is focused on what it does best. And as you can imagine, I can combine all 4 projects at once. It's the same scenario as before, but for the deployment, I'm also using Argo rollouts. And you can see this scenario a lot if you have been following the platform engineering movement or developer portals. This is a very popular combination where you want to offer to developers a complete platform for everything. So maybe you adopt a Backstage or a Port or Compass or whatever for your developer portal, but then behind the scenes, you need somebody to take care of the jobs, like the actual jobs that will happen in your cluster. And they are almost always the Argo projects are the first recommendation because they all work so nice together. So you run all the 4 projects in your cluster, and then maybe for developers, you give them a nice dashboard that has the whole process for everything. So that's it. That was the quick tour of the 4 Argo projects. Now you should know what the Argo family is doing. When somebody says, hey, I'm using Argo, make a question. Is it Argo CD or is it Argo rollouts? If you're not part of the CNCF Slack, you should go in because most of the Argo developers are in the CNCF Slack. There are several channels there for each project. So, for Argo CD, for Argo rollouts. And you should also subscribe to the Argo blog because whenever there is a new release for any of the projects, Then there is a blog there that explains what are the new changes, what is happening, how you should adopt it. You can also see my email if you want to ask more questions after the recording. So we can do a pause here and see if we have any questions.
I think we have one question from Sandeep himself. So
What's the question?
uh, he's asking Sandeep, if you want, you can unmute and ask question. No, Sandeep, you're on mute. Uh, I can ask him on behalf of him. So he's asked three important questions, out of which one is, how did the name Argo came in?
That's a good question. There is a big discussion whether it's from the ancient Greek word, the Argonauts, which is the big quest, and that might be one explanation. I personally think that it was just four letters that you could type easily. We need to find the original developers and ask them about it. But you can imagine you are starting a journey with Argo. Like you adopt Argo and you're starting with journey, and this is your quest, and you need to find the perfect boat, the perfect crew, the perfect commander, and everything.
So the second question is a bit technical. So he's asking if why was Argo workflow created, and Airflow is one of a popular is quite popular. So what use case it has that what use case Argo workflows has that Airflow do not? Uh,
So you can find some comparisons. Actually, a better question for me is why Tecton and Argo workflows exist, because they are both Kubernetes native. If I remember correctly, Airflow doesn't have this capability that I explained, that you can use the Kubernetes auto-scaling tools that Argo workflows take on. So Argo workflows was created when Kubernetes already was there, like people knew the advantage of Kubernetes, and they said, let's create the best possible solution for Kubernetes specifically. There are many projects that do the same thing, but they are based on the traditional world, with virtual machines and cron jobs and old workflows. And sometimes you want, instead of adapting something to work with Kubernetes, it's better to say, okay, let's start from scratch. Same thing with ArgoCD. Like, there are many projects that deploy on Kubernetes, but they don't themselves run on Kubernetes, which is something completely different on how you scale. But if you search, Airflows versus Argo flows, or Tecton versus Argo flows, you can find many detailed articles from people that are much more expert than me, and you can see all the details there. I told you like the major highlight.
awesome. And the last one would be, he has requested if we could explain the traffic manager slide that had linked. Uh, uh,
Linker D again.
yeah,
Yeah, so maybe I'm too fast on this. Sorry. So I guess it's this slide. So here,
Yeah, yeah.
you are doing a canary and you want to send, let's say, 25% of the traffic to the canary. So if you're not using a traffic manager, the way Kubernetes works is super simple. The number of pods represents the number of traffic. That's what you get out of the box with just Kubernetes and nothing else. So if you have 4 pods, like with the old version, and you want to send 25% to the new version, you need to convert one of those 4 pods to the new version, so that if you look at the percentages, you have 1 out of 4. If you make a second pod the new version, now 2 pods out of 4 will be the new version, so you will instantly jump to 50%. The number of pods always represents your traffic. So if you want to do fine-grained, let's say, decisions, like 10%, as it is on the bottom left, you need to launch as many pods that have this ratio, because that's how basic Kubernetes works. Essentially, basic Kubernetes works in a almost round robin fashion. I have 10 pods. I will just send the traffic, and I don't know anything else about the traffic. But usually with canaries, you want to have some more flexibility. First of all, you want to know which of the users you are going to send to the canary. Like maybe you are deploying globally and you send, I want to deploy only to France. I will start with France, or maybe with my internal users, and you are using headers. So then you need a traffic manager that allows you to know what your connections are doing, and also that it can define exactly the percentages. So Linkerd is a service mesh, but you have seen the other table that also has, other Ingress implementations. And there, the number of pods doesn't matter anymore. You create an HTTP route or a virtual service in the case of Istio with different rules, or I don't remember what Linkerd has. And then you make a decision and say just send 30%, and I don't care about the number of pods. So you can see on the right diagram, I always have 4 pods. That's exactly the same number. I'm not changing the pods anymore. And then Linkerd does all the heavy lifting. So this is a much more flexible installation where I can make fine-grained choices, but also it means that you have a requirement to install Linkerd or another traffic manager. So, you gain something, you lose something. The one on the left is less flexible, but you don't need any external tools. The one on the right is more flexible, but you need an external tool. Is it more clear now what this slide shows?
Thanks, Kostis. Thanks for the crystal clear explanation. And overall, the whole presentation was really outstanding. I was just feeling that maybe your talk should have been like the very first episode of the project tour. It's really very, very good. And all that you explained about all the four projects of Argo. So it might seem surprising, but this is the first time. I mean, I am a total newbie to Argo, absolutely total newbie, and it like gave me a very good overview and very interesting. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I find that most people either know only Argo CD or only Argo rollouts, Argo workflows. So this is why I start with this. But we are not finished yet. Okay, we have some more time for some demo. We are going to talk about Argo CD because I'm guessing most people want to see Argo CD. And actually, the big surprise here is that although I have a private demo, there is also a public demo for Argo CD. So I pasted this on the chat. I don't know if you want to all attend this or you can send to the email. There is a public instance of Argo CD that you can visit right now in your browser. So you can see how it looks. Of course, because it's public, it's read only, like, you cannot change anything. You can just look at it. But if you want to see how Argo CD works and look at all the details, there is nothing to install. You can go there. And this is pretty interesting. Actually, you can see one of the applications is Argo CD itself. So you can see Argo CD managing Argo CD, which is always interesting. So the first thing I'm going to show is what I talked about, what each box represents. So each box represents an application CRD. Here it has the details, but I can click on one of them, click on the details, and then go look at other stuff. And most interesting, I can see the manifest. So this is an application that says go to this Git URL, get whatever is in there under the Argo events folder. Let's make this a bit bigger. And then go to the same server, to this namespace, and deploy it. And here we also have the sync policies, which I'm going to explain in a bit. And also if Argo CD needs to create a new namespace. So you can go and look at all the applications. And then the other interesting thing is that here you can also see the individual Kubernetes resources. Remember, I said that some developers really love Argo CD because they can use it as a generic Kubernetes dashboard for everything. So here I'm deploying Argo events and I can see a live instance on how all the components are deployed in the cluster and what is the hierarchy. So you can see the things that you already know. These are pods, these are secrets, these are services. And at the top on the left is the application itself. So this is great that you can see the structure, but what is even more greater is the feedback that you get not only on the application level, but also on the individual component. So for the application, you can see I have actually 2 statuses here. One, which just says if my application is healthy or not, which of course is great because if something is not healthy, I want to know it as soon as possible. But also the most interesting one for GitOps is the sync status, which says if what I have in Git is the same as I have in the cluster, which is, remember, is the big advantage of ArgoCD compared to traditional solutions, because this is real time information. This is happening right now. I know that right now this is true. If you have a Jenkins pipeline that is running, the Jenkins pipeline runs, let's say today, and then after 5 minutes, if your application is not healthy, the Jenkins pipeline knows nothing. Or if after 3 hours somebody changes a config map in your application, again, the pipeline doesn't know anything. The pipeline only knows what was happening the time at the time the pipeline was running. Here, this is real-time information where things are happening right now. So that's a great example. And then the second example is what I talked about before. So here I can go and look at Argo rollouts. And here ArgoCD says, look, this application is healthy. Everything is fine. It's running correctly. There is no problem, but it's out of sync. So even though this application is healthy right now, it is not the same as what you have in Git. Somebody has changed something. Somebody has gone into the cluster manually and changed something. And if you remember, this is the biggest problem you have with configuration drift. People going into the cluster and changing stuff on their own, and then you never know what is happening. Okay, that's great. I know this for the application, but ArgoCD goes one step over and shows me the individual status for each component. So I get the same status for each component. So I can look, let's say, at this deployment, and I can see the same two green checks. So I think I know that this deployment is healthy and that nothing has changed. But you can see these other components, they have, again, this yellow arrow. So something has changed in those components. And before you say I need to click on them to see what is happening, I don't. There is a very nice button here called diff, which makes all this very easy. And it goes right away and tells me what has changed. Okay, I think this is magic. Like, even if you have today an environment where you are not certain if what you have in Git is the same thing as you have in cluster, you can put ArgoCD and instantly it will detect this problem and it will tell you what is changed. So now I can look at this and make a decision. Maybe this is something that I need. So I will go to the developer and say, look, we need this committed in Git, or maybe it's something I don't need and I can discard it. But the fact that I knew that this application is not what I have in Git, and I could literally in 5 seconds, like you see what I did, I just started from the main screen, I clicked here, and then I clicked diff, and saw the diff right away, literally in 5 seconds. This is not something you usually get with traditional applications. Like Jenkins cannot tell you if something is different or not. So this is pretty interesting, and I think it's the biggest strength of ArgoCD compared to existing solutions. I don't know if there is also an example with a failure to see how it looks. Oh yeah, so here is an application that has an issue. You can see it has a red state. So this is the other example. This is synced, like what I have in Git is what I have in the cluster. Nobody has done anything manual, but the application has a problem. And again, I can instantly understand what is the problem. So here I have a PC, for example, that looks okay because I see green check marks, and I can just scan, with my eye and see that this deployment has an issue. And what is wrong with this deployment? This pod has an issue. I don't even know if this is a real example or if they have created this as a demo, but you can go in and get the usual logs. Here is here is the back of pulling image. I think it's done on purpose, like it's looking at an image that doesn't exist. So I also have access to the events. So you can see again how fast I discovered the problem. I started from the top. I went to the application right away, and I clicked again in 2 seconds and found what was the problem. And you can compare, this with other tools, even with just kubectl, that ArgoCD gives you this capability straight away. And the big reminder is that this is real-time information. Like if I fix this, after 1 minute, ArgoCD will automatically run again and apply the fix that I just created. So now the next question, which I think we mentioned in the beginning, it was regarding the sync policies. And if we go to the details and the manifest, remember in the beginning I said that the ArgoCD application is super simple. It just connects a Git repository with a Kubernetes cluster. Of course, that's the first basic scenario, but then you can define several other parameters in the application of what you want to happen. So this automated parameter says that for this particular application, you can change per application. ArgoCD will automatically apply any changes that it finds in Git, which is what you normally want. Like every time there is a change in Git, you also want ArgoCD to apply. Maybe for some production environments, you don't want this. And then if you apply this policy, you also have sub-policies. So self-heal means that if ArgoCD finds a difference between Git and the cluster, it will not ask you at all. It will not even show you the diff. It will just discard the changes and apply what is in Git straight away. So my recommendation is to apply this at least in production. Usually in production, you don't want manual changes that were not recorded anywhere. And especially if you're working in a company, with financial legislations and you have auditing events, stuff like this is not something you want. Prune is another policy where you define if you want ArgoCD to actually delete applications from the clusters. So if you delete something in Git, ArgoCD normally has a choice if you also want to delete the same thing from the cluster. Maybe you want, maybe you don't. It's an extra safety check. So I think that's it for the public instance. Then if we have no more questions, I can also show one final thing.
Yeah, I have one question, Kostas, regarding that RBAC in Argo CD. Let's say I have a developer team who also needs to get an access of Argo CD. So can I give, is there any feature of RBAC, like role-based access for developers, which we can give to anybody from the team, so they don't do any changes, just like this demo platform, that we can't do any changes in the applications, we can just watch it. So can we have such feature there in Argo CD?
So one of the things I like to do is when I find a question that people ask all the time, instead of answering the question again and again, I write a full guide about this exact question. So you can get this URL. The answer is yes, you can. ArgoCD is created for multi-tenant installations where you can have many developer teams. If you remember, I said that ArgoCD, once you install it, defines its own CRDs. So there is the application project CRD where you are allowed to define policies. You can use, first of all, your SSO system that you already have to get your teams and your developers. And then you can define specific privileges and say, I want this team to look at this application or to be able to edit this application and to sync this application, whatever you want to do. You can see the format. And then after you finish and you apply everything, you can essentially, first of all, change the UI according to the team. So if I'm a developer and I log into the ArgoCD UI, I only see the things that you allow me to see. So maybe usually it's only, the applications of my team, but maybe you can also allow me to look at applications from other teams only with read-only access. So here you can see two different teams, and this team sees 4 applications. This team just looks at 1 application, and I do not allow them to delete. So they can look at the application from the other team, but they are not allowed to delete anything. And Argo has like several RBAC capabilities that you can change, like depending on what you want to do. Here I have another example where they cannot even sync the application. So it's up to you. Maybe you want not to allow developers to use Argo just as a read-only dashboard. They can only look stuff, but not change anything. Maybe you want to allow them to sync applications, to deploy, but not delete anything. Maybe for some applications, you want to give them full power. It's up to you. Okay, so that's the full guide. Usually all my articles come with a GitHub repo, which is in this case, this example. So you can use it as a starting point for your own environment.
Thanks.
I hope
Thanks
this answers the
this.
question.
Yep. I was looking for some guidance like this because I was trying to implement this feature in my current client project, and I was not able to find where the perfect guidance. You mentioned all the things in the blogs. I just read up.
Yeah, usually the airbag system is one of the things that I don't think it has, enough documentation. Like there is documentation on the main site about how things work, but not a guide like how you start and what you actually do.
Right, right. Okay, just last question regarding do you consider Flux CD as your competitor of Argo CD, or what is the main difference between these two tools?
So first of all, we love Flax. We really love it because it's a GitOps tool. So we want to promote GitOps in general. And right now, the two major projects are ArgoCD and Flax. So in that sense, they are not a competitor. They are the sister project or, the brother project, whatever you want to call them. If you talk about competing, it's not like there is a major thing that one project has and another project doesn't have. There are also companies that use both. Like some people use Flax usually for infrastructure because the Flax doesn't have a UI, and then they use Argo CD for the developers because the developers um, love the UI. There are some features like application sets that are not part of Flax, but I don't think that's a major decision. I would say try both and use whatever suits you, that's fine by me. And if you want to use both of them, that's also fine by me, like Flux for infrastructure, Argo CD for developers. You can search for comparisons, but because most projects change all the time, maybe the comparison that you could find will not be up to date, so it will not be correct on what it's saying.
Uh, so, Kostis, there's a question from Vijayendra Rathod. His question is how ArgoCD updates the private application image when the application image build is based on the brand's name and commit hash.
So there is another guide, which you will find if you search abusing the target revision. I will post this. So essentially, this is a set of best practices that tells you what you should do. And one of the things that you should not do is use a branch or hash in the target revision. And I also have some examples and also the problems that you create for developers. I think one of the most difficult problems is when you have like a production failure, and then it's super difficult to change Argo CD. So my first instinct to say you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't have a branch or a specific hatch in the target division. But the real answer is that you would also look at this project, Argo Image Updater, which remember I said in the beginning that some projects are not official yet, but they are part of project labs. So this is a project that helps you with this exact scenario. It monitors images for you that you push in registries, and it tries to update automatically your manifests for you. So if you want to know what is, let's say, the recommended way, take a look at this project as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kostis. Um,
Yeah, sure. Apparently, if we ask any question to Kostis, he has a blog link for us.
exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So remember, I said you should join the CNCF. What I do is I go to the CNCF channel and I, look at all the questions people are asking. And if I see the same question asked 3 times, I know that this is a popular question. So instead of answering 3 times, I just write the guide and then I just send the the URL. That's what I do. It's not a secret. It's like what I do as I work as a developer advocate.
Yeah.
So, Kostis, just a final question, not like it's the official final question. So, how people, if people want to contribute in the project, just like me, how they can start with it?
So you should go to GitHub and scan for issues that have the tag first good issue, and then just
Mhm.
take one and say, I want to work on this one. But you should also definitely join the CNCF Slack channel, go to the ArgoCD and say something like,
Mhm.
I'm taking this feature. There is a separate channel called ArgoCD Contributors, specifically for people who want to contribute. The ArgoCD, the main one is for users.
Cool.
I think one of the misconceptions I had was that Argo is just Argo CD, but today I realized that there are four different projects.
Now, if you ask some people that work in machine learning, if you ask them what Argo means, they will tell you it's Argo workflows. This is what they know.
Yeah.
So it depends on who is the audience and who is asking.
Right.
Awesome. I think that answers all the question. I don't see any new questions. And we are 2 minutes ahead, so let me just thank you so much, Kostis, for this amazing talk. I think it was very smooth and covered a lot of things that, and the best part of it was a lot of things were really new, and still it went so smooth, and we understood all of this. Thank you so much. And to wrap up, I would like to just show the audience that this is the team behind this project tool: Shivlal Bhai, Shivlal Sharma, Sandeep, and me, Vinesh. And thank you so much. Do follow us on Twitter. It's KTS Ahmedabad, and here's a LinkedIn. So make sure to follow us there. Connect to us there, because I think we promote all our events there, and we'll love to promote more, and we'll love more audience to join us and have some questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you.